In this video, we will explore the benefits and costs of vertical integration in more detail. As in the first video, vertical integration refers to expanding along different stages of the value chain. But in this graph, I want you to pay particular attention to the arrows between each stage, as these arrows represent important parts of the exchange relationship that is now internalized by the firm. One of the main benefits of vertical integration is the cost savings that come from efficiency by owning the transaction. Each one of those arrows in the prior graph between stages of the value chain represent a small profit margin if the firm buys this from an outside source. That outside supplier must earn a profit in order to stay in business. By internalizing or vertically integrating, the firm then gets to keep this profit margin or markup. In addition, vertical integration can allow a firm to avoid transaction costs, as we mentioned in the first video, by no longer having to incur costs such as contract negotiations or monitoring or compliance costs. The firm gets to keep that money internally and rather than spend it to govern the transaction. Third, vertical integration allows the firm to control its quality. Because the firm now owns that activity, whether it be production or retail sales, the firm has more say now in how that activity is conducted, the inputs used, etc. Thus, the firm can control the quality of its good or service better. Fourth, by vertically integrating, the firm now has better control over the scheduling and coordinating between the various stages of the value chain because they're now working with themselves, different divisions within their own firm, rather than an outside third party. This control may be important, particularly as the firm tries to maybe innovate new products or distribute new products. Finally, vertically integrating may protect the firm's core competencies or trade secrets. If the firm is able to then control these various aspects of the value chain, they do not have to disclose strategically relevant information to a third party. For example, when Apple produces its computers, that production is actually outsourced to a third party. By outsourcing production, they are sharing blueprints and technical specifications with this third-party supplier. Now, this third-party supplier has a non-disclosure agreement, but that still doesn't mean that there's still a slim chance of those trade secrets ending up in the hands of the wrong people. By vertically integrating, this limits that potential for loss, protecting the firm's trade secrets. Thus, if done right, vertical integration can provide the firm with additional value. These benefits here represent the sources of better off in that better off test. However, there are some costs or potential costs of vertical integration. The first is that different stages of the value chain may have different efficient production scales. In other words, the cost to produce the inputs may require one scale to be efficient. Meanwhile, the cost to actually assemble and manufacture the product rather than the input may operate at a different scale level to be efficient, creating potential additional costs to the firm. In addition, the firm must spend money to build capabilities to achieve the benefits of vertical integration. In other words, they're going to have to invest in resources and capabilities to become better at performing that value chain activity. That cost has to be weighed against the benefits. Third, when vertically integrating and gaining ownership over various stages of the value chain, the firm is essentially entering different businesses. Thus, management must have a good grasp of these strategically different businesses which face different levels of competition or different competitors than the firm is used to, and may also involve different uncertainties that the firm may not be aware of or experienced with. Thus, this management of strategically different businesses may increase the firm's costs. Fourth is the loss of competitive pressure. When the firm buys from an outside supplier, that outside supplier is always at risk of the firm switching suppliers, which forces the outside supplier to keep its prices down and be efficient. If I now internalize that supplier through vertical integration, that competitive pressure from alternative sources is now reduced or eliminated, thus potentially resulting in inefficient upstream stages of the value chain. Thus, the firm wants to try and make sure to keep the pressure on upstream value chain activities within its own firm in absence of this competitive pressure. Finally, one additional cost could be the lack of flexibility should technology or demand changes occur. If I am buying from an outside supplier and there's a technological change in production or a demand change, that cost is forced onto my external supplier. However, now if I vertically integrate and I become my own supplier, any changes in technology I must pay for, and any demand changes may leave me with excess capacity. So in highly volatile times where there are such technological or demand changes likely to occur, vertical integration may be more costly than it is worth. With these costs and benefits in mind, it's now worth it to quickly revisit the better off in ownership test. In the context of vertical integration, the better off test really is affected by the idea of specialized assets, which we referred to in the first video, where the firm may need to integrate in the presence of specialized assets in an exchange relationship, or by the potential for free riding by its competitors. The ownership test, in turn, is affected by the firm's ability to generate and enforce long-term contracts. If I can obtain the benefits of vertical integration, but I can do so through long-term contracts, the cost of ownership or the test of ownership fails, and I should not vertically integrate. Thus, we focus on the ability to include specific terms in the contract to control for contingencies such as pricing. With these costs and benefits and tests in mind, we now turn to some of the key questions in the vertical integration decision. First, during this process, the firm must disaggregate the value chain and understand where within the value chain profits are generated and or appropriated. Second, the firm must ask, do I have a competitive advantage, or can I generate a competitive advantage or obtain one if I perform that stage of the value chain? It's also worth looking at where the market power resides in these exchange relationships to understand whether the firm will be able to capture that market power. Third, is market failure likely? And by market failure, we mean the exchange between the different stages of the value chain. If done with an outside third party, that exchange breaks down. Say contracts cannot be renegotiated. And if market failure is likely, are the governance costs to prevent market failure too high? In that case, vertical integration makes sense. Then we want to focus on the need for coordination. If there's a high need for coordination between value chain activities and or frequent coordination is needed, vertical integration may provide the appropriate benefits and should be pursued. And then finally, there's the issue of agency costs, where the firm may be hiring an agent, the supplier, to perform an activity for it. If the agency costs are too high, in other words, the firm cannot be sure that its outside supplier or that its outside partner in the exchange relationship is doing what they're supposed to be doing, and the firm cannot design an incentive scheme to make that partner behave appropriately, the firm will want to vertically integrate. These questions will then help a firm decide whether vertical integration is the right decision, and should be considered in light of the better off in ownership test, because essentially these questions are helping you solve those better off in ownership tests by gathering additional information and pointing out key factors that will either produce the better off benefits or address the issues around the ownership test.